There I was, perched on the peak of the Empire State Building, looking over New York City, the greatest city on earth. I haven't worn the mask in over 30 years, but once I started flying through the air, it all came back to me. I was a little shaky at first, evident by the rawness of my web slinging and form, but with time and practice, I was soaring like, well, Spider-Man. However, this Spider-Man is a little different. When I first met Spider-Man in 1989, I never thought of the man or kid behind the mask. He was just Spider-Man to me, and that was enough, or so I thought. Instead of playing as Peter Parker, this time I was a kid named Miles Gonzalo Morales from Spanish Harlem, a teenager of black and Puerto Rican descent that walks and swings to a hip-hop beat, a positive member of his community who treats others with kindness and respect. I instantly connected with Miles. I'm not sure if it was his demeanor, his smile, or reference to his abuelita, but I instantly felt at home when I stepped into his house. Even though I'm not Puerto Rican, I can feel the Hispanic American influence throughout their home. When it comes to the campesino hat signifying the struggle of the people, to the visual of Miles' father sacrificing his life for his country, the United States. As a Hispanic American growing up with my Mexican grandmother, I always had one foot in two worlds, that of my grandmother's and the one I was born into and love. It also extends to the neighborhood, that's full of diversity with murals on display shining light on the struggles we face and the triumphs we share as a multi-ethnic community that makes up what we call the United States, a melting pot worth fighting for. And there will be a lot of fighting. You'll face goons from Roxxon, a corporation that has its hands in many things that affect your neighborhood, and members of the underground, supporters of the Thinkers' quest of revenge against Roxxon and the CEO who resides on top. You'll face popular villains like Rhino, and anti-hero the Prowler, and they will test this young Spider-Man and push him to his peaks, in hopes of not only breaking his body, but breaking his drive as well. Just as Miles is unsure of himself, he's also unsure of his fighting ability. But with time and practice, just like web slinging, he will become a pro in no time. As you unlock experience points, you can gain additional fighting moves and power-ups. Together with your unique Venom energy, a lightning force Miles was able to harness, makes you the ultimate Spider-Man, chaining combos and fighting in mid-air, never touching the ground below you. Gaining confidence with each new encounter you face and each new foe you conquer. You also have gadgets to use at your disposal to bring destruction to a maximum. But Spider-Man's strength doesn't only come with brute force. Besides having Venom energy and gadgets, this Spider-Man also takes stealth to a whole new level, with the ability to become entirely invisible, which makes non-lethal options a whole lot easier if you happen to be a pacifist. Side quests come in many forms. Some side quests have narratives that give you a closer look into the people who live and work in your neighborhood. In this bodega, we come across Theo and his cat named Spider-Man, who was a victim of assault, robbery, and kidnapping. His cat Spider-Man was taken from him. Anybody who has ever lost a pet understands the heartbreak, panic, and hopelessness that sets in. It breaks you. Even though Theo was disappointed to see me, or should I say this Spider-Man, especially now that I wasn't here to stop this was still my neighborhood. And even though he don't believe in me, he does believe in Spider-Man, or at least he once did, given the name of his cat. It gave me a chance to prove, not only to him, but to myself, that I was worthy of wearing the mask, and at the same time, saving a freaking cool ass cat named Spider-Man. And of course, I did. After a little web slinging, that is, I brought him home safe and sound back to the bodega and his owner. Anybody who has ever had a lost pet returned to them can understand the sigh of relief that overcomes you. From that moment on, not only was I the real Spider-Man to them, I was also family. There's other side quests too, like helping the local shelter in the middle of a snowstorm, or helping a local mural artist who happens to be deaf with uncovering a crime syndicate in Harlem. It's great having a deaf character in the game who is a fully fleshed out contributing member to this community. Maybe one day we'll have a deaf Spider-Man. You'll also be stopping robberies, car chases, and assaults. You can access them through an app on your phone at any time once you come within the vicinity of the crime, or you can just address them as you find them. Besides the XP, there's not really much to fighting crime, but it does give you a chance to practice your fighting skills and gives you the overall feeling of doing good. There's also crates to find, speedruns, recordings, and other activities scattered throughout the city for you to do. However, you can't really access any of the buildings, so they're pretty much there for show. And when you do interact with the public, besides taking pictures, maybe giving high fives, there's nothing else that you can really do. So for the next Spider-Man, there's definitely room for improvement, at least when adding substance to the buildings and to the public. The story is predictable and pretty much follows a typical script of family, friendship, betrayal, and redemption. But it's the way it's delivered that makes the story great and memorable. It builds a story and introduces characters with enough of a backstory for you to care for them, but with enough room for your imagination to fill in the blanks. And sometimes you're surprised by how wrong or right you were about each character as the story unfolds. By the end, which was about 8 to 10 hours long, you'll feel satisfied with your journey while at the same time wanting more. Not because the story was short, but because they were able to create memorable characters, not too different from us, that we're able to connect with and in the end come to love, or at least understand. When the main story was done, I was left with tears. When the credits roll, the question is, will I still put on the mask? For me, the answer is yes. I'm still putting on the mask. I still have locations to explore, murals to find, pictures to take, and activities to complete. Crime in the city never seems to stop. Plus, web slinging through New York City is breathtaking to say the least. Even if I were to hang up the mask now, I could walk away fulfilled, both when it comes to my money spent, but more importantly, with the time I gave this Spider-Man. I never thought about the impact that Miles Morales as Spider-Man would have on people, especially for kids growing up with Miles Morales as their first Spider-Man. When I was a kid, I was more likely to find a character like Speedy Gonzales on TV, a rat with a sombrero and pistols who yells "Arriba, arriba," than a positive member of the community like Miles Morales, let alone the real Spider-Man. Miles Morales is the real Spider-Man, a role model for all to look up to, and if he's good enough for Peter Parker, then he's definitely good enough for me and you.